Hello and welcome to SGPN's A Daily Dog. I'm your host, Britton Hess. I'm here with my favorite Underdog Fantasy Pick and Plays for Friday, June 27th, 2025. Also got a couple plays for Saturday as well. So we are getting our picks in on Friday that will last at least 2 days of this weekend. We got lots of stuff on the menu today, some stuff that we don't always get. We obviously get the MLB stuff every single day. That's part of our show. Tennis, we're still rolling with the grass season. WNBA got a couple entries. Lotto, Dong Squad, a little PFL Friday night, and then Saturday UFC that makes martial arts main event. So, if you were looking at how you want to kind of what you want to take most serious, what you want to put the most risk on, today, I would say look at the MLB top 4 entries and then the Saturday UFC entries. That is where I would put the most money, maybe 60 to 80% of your bankroll for these next couple days on those entries. Did I say that if you're new to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code DailyDog? You should use promo code DailyDog if you're new to Underdog Fantasy. Best promo code out there. 50% deposit match bonus worth up to $1,000. All right, hit some entries yesterday, got some refunds yesterday for injuries and whatnot, and had some losers yesterday. Let's get back into mostly winners here. Let's go MLB entry number 1, Brandon Lowe, higher than 1.5 total bases. He had a homer yesterday. I don't think Lowe is going to slow down against the Orioles, division rivalry here. Rays are just back in the mix all of a sudden, same record or one game behind in the loss column to the Yankees. Orioles stink. So give me Brandon Lowe higher than 1.5 total bases, and I'll pair with Alejandro Kirk higher than 0.5 RBIs, potentially moving up in the order if Vladdy is seriously hurt after getting hit by a pitch yesterday. Brian Bayo has been hot and cold. His overall numbers are pretty good, but on a game-to-game basis, I don't trust him at all. He had a 7 earned run game against the Braves, for example, and that was before the Braves offense had started a current turn. So I'm going to take Alejandro Kirk higher than 0.5 RBIs with Brandon Lowe higher than 1.5 total bases, 4.09x multiplier. MLB number 2, Francisco Lindor higher than 8.5 fantasy points, Byron Buxton higher than 8.5 fantasy points. Buxton, the Twins, going to face the Tigers again, and Shane Gibson Long. Not going to be a scary pitching matchup at all for Buxton. And then Francisco Lindor gets to go against Mitch Keller, who's been better than his win-loss record. That's what I'll say about Keller. But at the end of the day, it's still Frankie Lindor who can steal bases. He can get walked. In 19 plate appearances, he's got only 2 hits, but he's got walked. He's got walked 5 times. So there's a lot of there's a lot of ways to get points on the board for the fantasy market for Francisco Lindor. As I said, his batting average is terrible, but his batting average is terrible. But when you factor in the 5 walks, it's actually a pretty good OBP of 421. And when we're looking at 7.5 fantasy points, we need him, 8.5 fantasy points. We need him to be getting on base. All right, that is a 3x multiplier. MLB entry number 3, Jackson Chourio higher than 7.5 fantasy points for the man, the myth, the legend, for the Brewers hosting the Rockies. Rockies, who knows who's pitching for them? I don't even care. I think there is some early reports on there's some early reports on who it could be, but and I think that it's definitely not bad if it's the matchup I'm expecting, but it doesn't even matter with this guy. 7.5 fantasy points. I would be looking at that versus virtually anybody. I think that you're getting an advantage because there's not a fully fleshed out rotation or projected rotation here, or game usage plan for the pen and the starter for the Rockies. Crow-Armstrong higher than 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs against Brandon Walter and the Astros. I don't think Walter's that impressive. I think that Pete Crow-Armstrong can do this all on one swing. 3x multiplier with Chourio higher than 7.5 fantasy points. Pete Crow-Armstrong higher than 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. MLB entry number 4, Brendan Donovan higher than 1.5 total bases for the Cardinals. And then I'm going to pair, it's the Guardians and Luis Ortiz, who is a real weak spot in this rotation for the Guardians, a team that is about as mediocre as they come in Major League Baseball. Luis Ortiz is below mediocre as a starting pitcher. Brendan Donovan should be just fine in this matchup, higher than 1.5 total bases. Pairing that with one of my favorite guys from last baseball season, Luis Rengifo, higher than 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs against Jake Irvin and the Nationals. Nationals West Coast trip continues. It is probably not going to be good. This Angels team is surging. They're at 40-40. They can have a good series here and actually, start stacking some being on the right side of the win column by the time they get to 50% through the season. Just think about that. That's this game. If they win, they'll be over 500 after half the season, which is insane for the Angels making that turnaround. 3x multiplier on that one with Donovan higher than 1.5 total bases, Rengifo higher than 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. Tennis entries. Alex Michelsen, lower than 23.5 games played against quarantine Moutet. Moutet is pretty good right now, just on all surfaces, but I don't think that this surface is going to suit him against Michelsen. Michelsen is just advancing all year. I hope he doesn't wear himself out before Wimbledon, but I think he's going to have a pretty easy day here. So lower than 23.5 games played for Michelsen against Moutet. Taylor Fritz, lower than 22.5 games played against Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. Fritz navigated some tough waters against, finishing that match against, against João Fonseca. That helped us out. And then, won a second match against Marcos Giron on the same day, which is, pretty impressive stuff. He's going ADF on grass, not that scary. 3x multiplier on this one with the lower 22.5 games played for Taylor Fritz, lower 23.5 games played for Alex Michelsen. Tennis number 2, we're going to go with Jess Pegula, higher than 12.5 games won versus Linda Noskova. This goes 3 sets to me, and I think Pegula wins the match. So as long as she doesn't get blanked in that in that set she loses, she's going to hit higher than 12.5 games won. And then Jensen Brooksby, lower than 0.5 sets a loss, lower than 0.5 sets loss, lower than 0.5 sets won versus Hugo Humbert. Humbert, obviously a very good server, a very good grass court player and everything. I think Brooksby, he's had his return from suspension. I think this is going to be a little bit of a reality check on some of the momentum he's gathered this week. So 3.51x multiplier on that one. WNBA entry number 1, Caitlin Clark, higher than 20.5 points. She missed yesterday. Why did she miss yesterday? Because I want to make sure she was perfectly healthy to play primetime against Paige Buchers, 2 young players, 2 young stars in this WNBA. So we're going with Caitlin Clark, higher than 20.5 points. Brittany Griner, lower than 5.5 rebounds. Just a tough matchup for Griner, the old veteran, the former Baylor standout, the former prisoner of the country of Russia. She's hit this. She had 6 in her last game, but again, I don't think the Atlanta Dream are going to have a nice time against the Minnesota Lynx, and a 2.49x multiplier on that one. And WNBA number 2, speaking of big stars, Paige Buchers taking the world by storm for the Wings. They're only 4-12 this year, but Buchers has been heating up. And then I'm going to pair it with Breanna Stewart, higher than 20.5 points. Stewart is kind of annoying not annoying. It's Ionescu has been letting me down. Breanna Stewart has actually been pretty consistent lately, so I'm going to stick with that hot hand. Breanna Stewart, higher than 20.5 points. Paige Buchers, higher than 17.5 points. All right, Lotto entry number 1 for the day. We're going to go Colin Morikawa, round score lower than 67.5 strokes. He had 69 yesterday. I think he can improve by 2 strokes, no problem here. We already have our full tournament sweat going with him. Caitlin Clark, higher than 3.5 3-pointers made. Something's got to give. She's going to have a hot game from the 3-point line, and she might as well do it versus another young star. Nick Martinez, pitcher for the Reds, higher than 2.5 earned runs allowed against the Padres. Padres offense stinks, but so does Nick Martinez. It's his former team. I think the Bats win the day there. Ketel Marte, higher than 2.5 total bases. Marte has dealt with some adversity lately. He had a bad game to close out that series against the White Sox. Look for him to rebound here. On this Lotto entry, 24.27x multiplier or 14.56x / 3.64x if it goes a 3 out of 4. Dong Squad number 1, Brandon Nimmo, higher than 0.5 home runs. Nimmo can do this. He's done it before against Mitch Keller. Jackson Merrill, higher than 0.5 home runs. See what I said about Nick Martinez sticking as a starter. Ronald Acuna Jr., higher than 0.5 home runs. Again, Acuna, one of the best players overall in baseball. 66.73x if it goes 3 over 3. Flex at 33.36x on the flex. If it goes 2 out of 3 on the flex, 6.04x multiplier. Dong Squad number 2, Joe Adell, higher than 0.5 home runs. This is why the Angels have been good. The back half of their lineup's actually been competing and actually making plays. Joe Adell, namely him. Nick Castellanos, higher than 0.5 home runs. Okay, just think about this: 3 or 6 career at bats against Bryce Elder, 3 home runs. I'm gonna hope Nick Castellanos stays hot there. Then Aaron Judge, higher than 0.5 home runs. Come on, it's Judge. 93.4x multiplier or 46.7x if it goes 3 out of 3 on the flex. 10.44x if it goes 2 out of 3 on the flex. Very good value. PFL for Friday night. Valentin Moldavsky, fight time lower than 12.5 minutes. Alexander Romanov, his opponent, doesn't fight long fights, so this thing's going to be done quick. Dalton Rasta, fight time lower than 14.99 minutes. Aaron Jeffrey doesn't really get finishes. These guys are familiar, and Rasta has fallen in love with the finish. I think it would be good value there. So this is a 4.39x multiplier on those two. PFL entry number 2, Phil Davis, fight time lower than 12.5 minutes. The old man is not trying to be around for a long time. He's trying to be there for a good time. He's gotten higher K rate or KO rate in his last several fights. I think that's going to continue here. Rufon Stotts, fight time higher than 14.99 minutes. That's just what he does. Fabian Edwards, fight time higher than 12.5 minutes. Again, that's just what he does. Those three is only a 2.72x multiplier, but I think it's worth it. Then Saturday, UFC. This is where I'm super excited about this weekend. This is a sporting event of the weekend. Playoffs are done. It's time to focus on the stuff that really matters. UFC. Ilia Topuria higher than 0.5 knockouts. He's going to knock out Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira does not have good striking defense, especially in the head. Ilia Topuria has the craziest power we've seen in a long time for guys this size. Kai Kara France higher than 0.5 knockouts against Alexandre Pantoja. I've been waffling on this, but I'm calling my shot here. Kai Kara France is going to knock out Alexandre Pantoja. It's time for a changing of the guard. 8.28x multiplier. Saturday, UFC number 1, Josh Van, fight time lower than 14.99 minutes. I don't think it's a luck. He goes the distance against Raw Dog Brandon Royval. Terrence McKinney, fight time lower than 4.5 minutes against Vyacheslav Borshchev. Don't blink. You'll miss this fight. 3.71x multiplier on that. All right, that's all I got for you today. Good luck on your picks, and let's make some money.